Hey, y'all, I'm Shane Sams. I'm the host of this podcast, and I just want to thank you and tell you that I appreciate you for listening today. I've got another amazing expert, author, and powerful entrepreneur on the program to show you what it takes to succeed, to let you look at the magician's hands to figure out what they're doing up on the stage and take that wisdom into your own life and your own business. My guest today is a new good friend of mine. His name is Michael Pink. Michael Pink is a prolific author. We're going to talk about a book today that's sold over 400,000 copies. Now think about that. 400,000 copies. I think you only need 20,000 to be a bestseller. So he's not one of these Amazon bestsellers. He's an actual bestseller. Michael also is an awesome on-stage speaker with deep roots in the speaking industry, and he is a worldwide expert in getting more sales. And that's what we all need. Like Mark Cuban says, sales fixes everything. Every entrepreneur, every business owner, every author, everybody needs to be better at sales. And Michael Pink is going to tell you how to do it today. In today's podcast, Michael's going to tell you how he got his start deep in rural Canada, where he had to go and sell life insurance policies, knocking door to door at 2 a.m. in remote fishing villages. I kid you not. I did not know about this about Michael. It's an amazing story. We're also going to talk about how to overcome failure, how to keep moving forward no matter how bad things get. Michael is going to show us the epiphany that he had that helped him not only believe in himself, not only helped him find courage to go out and create an amazing sales career, but also to truthfully look at himself and niche down to where he was best able to succeed. We're going to wrap up today's podcast with Michael's 3-phase system comprised of 7 steps to take your sales game to the next level in God's ways. These are biblical sales principles that anyone can use in their business to find more success, gain more influence, and serve more people out in the world. I had dinner with Michael just a few weeks ago. He's an amazing guy. I know you're going to love this interview. I know you're going to love his story, and I know it's going to help you grow your business. So if you're listening in the car, turn the volume up. Or maybe you're working out, get ready because you're going to get pumped up and start picking up more weights. Wherever you are listening today, go pour yourself a cup of coffee or maybe a mason jar of sweet tea. Sit back, relax, take some notes, and enjoy the show. Three, two, one. Michael Pink, my friend. What is that?
Hey, what's up, Shane? Good to see you.
Man, I have been looking forward to this for like 2 or 3 days to introduce you to everybody that listens to my voice because we've got to become friends over the last few months. And man, it's just been such a blessing. And man, it's going to be an awesome conversation today. Before we get into the sales stuff, though, I got a question for you because this is fascinating right now.
Go ahead.
You are a speaker, author, out there on stages doing things, in front of people, selling stuff, all that. Dude, this pandemic crushed the entire live event and sales industry in person, but it does feel like it's over. It feels like it's almost over. What are you thinking about what's the vibrations going through the live event industry where you got your ear to the railroad track right now?
Well, it varies from state to state. I'm in Sarasota, Florida. I went into Trader Joe's the other day, and for the first time ever, since the pandemic thing broke out, I only saw one person wearing a mask. Prior to that, I was the only one not wearing one. So well, actually, I had to wear it in there.
Florida was different, though. Florida had like a 2-month pandemic. Everybody else had like a 2-year pandemic, right?
Yeah. And some of them want to make it longer. I get that. So, it definitely affected things. So you had to adjust. And by pulling back, you kind of had to identify, well, who am I really working with? Who am I working with closely? Who are the people that I'm really connected to, because it's harder to connect in a digital way than it is in person. So because of that, in my mind, it takes, there's a little bit more effort. I want to connect with you. And if you and I were having coffee or lunch or dinner or what, our families together, the connection will be quicker, stronger, and more immediate. But we're doing it this way because we don't have another choice. So we have to work at it. We have to be more deliberate. We have to set aside the time, and we have to say, I'm going to connect with you. So before I got on this meeting, for example, I'm in here in my office. I'm praying for you, praying for your business, praying for you. Thankful for the friendship. Thank you for this. And I want to see where this goes. And so that's part of it. You change a little bit. Say, well, like I'm out doing some things earlier today, and I'm passing by various people, and I'm thinking, I don't know these people, but I'm going to pray for them. because
Yeah.
they cross my path. And so I'm wanting to make people important, and I'm remembering them and bringing them up before God. So for me, I transfer some of that over to the Lord and say, how can I be a blessing to this person? And that's what I wanted to be for you today, because I want to honor you, my friend.
I think it's going to erupt that kind of mentality, because you do feel like for example, we just had Vacation Bible School, and at our church, we're still having it. We got 2 more days of it, but last year we had to cancel it. And every year before it, it's funny. I've done Bible school now, man. I mean, ever since my kids were born, we've done Bible school, and then Jocelyn and me volunteered at a Bible school for a couple years before that, doing the sports and stuff, because I was a coach. So that's just what I did, right? They're like, here, you take the bag of balls. You're the coach, right? And it's funny though, because like last year, man, I've always, we have a saying around here: there's no tired like Bible school tired. And you're just crushed after an all day working, and then go to Bible school, and you're just getting home at 9 o'clock. And, it's kind of a little complaining. I'm not going to lie, a little bit, but man, when they took it from us, it was like, oh my gosh, our kids are going to lose this experience because of this pandemic. And we are going to lose this live going through this together with those people we go to church with, and the other parents and the other kids. And when we got it back, man, I remember when they announced it at church, there was a cheer that Bible school is coming back. And I just think, I know the world's changed. I know Zoom and all these things are now a way of life, and there's going to be a lot of that. But man, I just think that when we are all totally open and the world is revived, man, live events are going to be wild. I mean, it's just going to be like hugs, crazy.
Back, they're just waiting to. In fact, I'm rethinking, because I've adjusted to the Zoom. I'm thinking, nobody has yet rushed into this. Life Church has done that, but not a lot. A lot of people haven't rushed back into it. They're a little hesitant, but I think there's a tremendous pent up demand for that.
Yeah, man. Everybody just getting back in person. Yeah. Social media is good for well, you know how like you meet someone and you haven't seen them in like 20 years, and then but you're Facebook friends, so you like know their kids' names and like all whatever, and then you see them in person, and there's this weird maintenance that happened from social media. It is terrible for like getting to know someone. Like getting in person is the better, but like that's what I've been using social media for, is just maintenance. It just feels like a good way to connect, right?
Yeah,
man. That's now. How did we get on each other's radar? Tell me about that. How did you hear about? We're for just full disclosure here, people. Me and Michael are working with this amazing organization called Oxlos, who is leading the charge to get live events back on stages around the country. And it's an amazing organization ran by a guy named Joe Johnson. But I kind of got sucked into this by Michael Pink here. So I want Michael to tell you that, and then we're going to get into Michael's story about how he even ended up.
I'm going to tell you this. Look, there's a lot of information marketing online, and somehow, and I don't remember how, whether it was Facebook or whether it was on a YouTube ad or somehow I came across your webinar that you had done. It wasn't live when I saw it. And I thought, okay, well, this is a Flip Lifestyle, very interesting name. I wonder what that means. And so it was membership sites. And so I watched the webinar, and I found it to be the most compelling webinar that I've seen. When I say compelling, what I meant was I felt it had broad appeal, and that what you offer was absolutely achievable by anyone. A lot of people have webinars and are offering something, but it's a little out of range. Okay, it could be any number of things. I don't need to go down that they think, I don't think I can do that. But what you did is, first of all, you demonstrated that, hey, we did it. Jocelyn and I, we did it. Number two, here's a whole host of ordinary people, no name, no nothing people. They also have done it, and done it very successfully. And I watched that and I thought, you know what? I know a lot of people that are in a place right now where they would love to flip their lifestyle. So I'm going to share that. I shared it with a few friends. And then as Oxlos, Joe Johnson was putting together this Life Surge event. They can go to lifesurge.com to look it up. But when they were going to, when he was putting that, putting that together, and they wanted to have, certain speakers and certain education, I thought, what's that guy's name? Flip, not Flip Wilson, Flip Lifestyle.
Right. His name's not Flipped, but the brand was, right?
Yeah, Shane Sams. And I thought, that's it. So I sent it to Joe. I said, this guy's got something special. And it's not, and by the way, it's two things, because you can have something special, but you don't necessarily have a special delivery. You have both. You have you have the thing that people are buying that they need, that the tool, you have that. But secondly, you have the delivery in an approachable, attainable, achievable way that matters to people. They can see themselves in your role doing what you did. And that's the key. And you did it masterfully. So I thought, I want Shane to be known to the world. I want to help you. I want to bless you. I didn't know you, but I just, I esteemed you as a brother, and I thought I can help him. And not that you needed any help, but I wanted to get help if I could, because you were doing phenomenal. You didn't need anything that I knew of, but I thought maybe I could introduce you into a place that would even expand your footprint, so to speak.
Oh, man, I'm so glad you did, dude, because me and Michael got to hang out a couple of weeks ago down in Florida with the Oxlow's team, with Joe Johnson and all the amazing, powerful kingdom entrepreneurs that were in that place. I mean, just unbelievable stuff. We're going to talk to more of those on the podcast too, but man, it's just cool to see that if you, one of the big principles we have is a core value, and I think everybody should adopt this principle, is a principle of not being outcome dependent. Really this year in 2021, we've just been like, look, we're going to do the things and we're going to let it out into the world, and God will take care of the results. Like if we show up, that good things are going to happen. And man, I've never had more validation that just showing up every day for your people, trying to serve people, as when I was in that room last week. So man, I just want to thank you for even thinking about it. I am so glad that we're together, but I want to learn more about you, man. That's what I'm here for. So dude, you've done a lot. I mean, you're a speaker, you're a sales guy, you're an author, so just take me back a little bit, man, and tell me who Michael Pink is and how you got started in this, this industry and the sales business. And because sales, what I have learned as an entrepreneur that I did not learn when I worked for the government for 10 years is sales is everything. Sales fixes everything. Sales spreads ideas. And you can tweak so many things in your business and even your life. But man, if you get the sales part right, what are you selling? And you're not only going to help a ton of people, but you're going to make a lot of impact in your own world. So how did you go down this rabbit hole and become,
Okay. It's a story. I got to tell you, first of all, as a kid, my dad was in sales. He was the vice president of sales for Brunswick of Canada. He'd done sales in other industries as well. Very accomplished. That's what he did. That's the only thing I ever knew that he did. Well, as I was coming of age into my teens, I would ask my dad, what do you think I should be? What do you think I should do? I'd ask him for his advice. He said, I don't want to tell you, son, because I'm afraid that if I tell you, you might become that just to fulfill my expectation. I want you to be happy. You figure it out. But I pressed him in a nice, polite, persistent way, a sales trait. And so he said, well, okay, I'll give you two pieces of advice. Number one, you're really good with numbers. You're good with math. Maybe you should be an accountant. And number two, whatever you do, don't go into sales. And I said, why? And my dad was, a paragon of virtue and integrity and highly successful and all that. I said, why? He said, well, son, there are wolves out there. And he said, you're so naive and you're so innocent. I'm afraid you'd get eaten alive.
Wow.
Or worse, Shane, become a wolf.
Oh, dang, man. So he was trying to protect you is the reason he didn't want to say that to you.
Right. But as it turned out, so, I graduated from high school early. I combined 11th and 12th grade just to get out of school. I didn't like school. I got a job, and I was actually driving forklift. I was a forklift driver, and they went on strike. It was a union shop in Canada, and I'd been there about a year and a half, whatever. And I was, I guess I was 18 at the time, going on 19. I'm trying to remember my time frame. 19. I was just turned 19. They went on strike, and so I'm in the newspaper looking for a job, and I saw an ad saying you would not believe the opportunity. I don't know if they make them like this anymore, but the headline said, "Earn what you're worth." I thought, man, I can earn, and it said unlimited income. I thought, fantastic. And it was straight commission sales, selling life insurance. I thought, I got to call these guys right now. They had no idea how much I'm worth. And I was so excited about that. Right. And so I applied for and got the job selling life insurance policies. Now, I was terrified of sales, as it turned out. I didn't have any confidence whatsoever. But I did have a couple of things that I later learned in my teaching, level 1, 2, and 3. Level 3 is where the sort of the supernatural part of it comes in. It's where God moves on your behalf, things that you don't even expect. You have amazing things happen. But I tapped into a principle of just belief and I believed certain things. So in my first week in sales, they told us that the goal that they gave us was, you got to sell 50 whole life policies your first week.
Bro, let me tell you about something here now. My dad was an insurance agent. He's an independent agent here in Kentucky. And I hawked insurance, man, for my dad, like late in high school, early in college, occasionally in college, and right after school. And let me tell you something. Selling 50 whole life policies in a week ain't no joke. That's great. That's a crazy goal, man.
Yeah, it's a goal. The policy in today's money would be around $7,000, probably the equivalent of a burial policy.
Like a burial policy, yeah. Still though, man, that's a lot. 4 or 5 a day, man. That's like hardcore.
Yeah, it was definitely a lot. It was more like I had 5 days out my first week, so it'd be like 10 a day.
Yeah, and man, that's overwhelming. That's just overwhelming.
Yeah, but thing is, Shane, I'm 19 years old. I believed them. I thought, okay, that's what you're supposed to do. And they gave us leads of people who had accident insurance with the company, and we would call them. And so the first week, the sales manager took the new team out to Vancouver Island, to a rainforest, to a small town on the west coast of British Columbia, and gave us the leads and sent us on our way. And so I was doing pretty good. I was making some sales here and there, but I didn't know certain things. Now, this is embarrassing, Shane. I didn't know things that you would say, how could you not know this? But for example, I had 3 leads one night, and it was Friday night, my last night of the trip there. And it was at this little village. And the only way to the village was you had to go up switchbacks, up a mountain road like this on a logging road, and back down. It wasn't paved. There's a logging trucks coming up and down. It looked like about a 15-minute drive on the map, but it took almost 3 hours. So I got there about just before 11 o'clock at night when I arrived, to call on 3 people, 3 different places. Yeah. So
was this door to door?
Yeah. Well, you had leads. And so this person.
Oh, you had to go find them, basically, track them down.
So in the village, I find the first one, I go knock on the door. Their porch light was on, but they wouldn't answer the door. And I thought, why won't you answer the door? Your lights are on. I don't understand it. But they wouldn't answer the door. It was almost 11 o'clock. So then I go to the next one, and that was a fishing boat. It was a boat. And I went on the dock. And I found the guy, and they invited me in, and they were smoking some salmon and, preparing it, and offered me some, but they didn't buy a policy. And I had one more lead. I said, where's this guy? And they said, oh, that's the chief of the Indian reservation over such and such, told me where it was, a couple miles away. And I said, okay. And so now I was afraid, because there was about a 90% unemployment rate, about a 90% alcoholism rate. And I'd seen too many Westerns as a kid. I was a little nervous to go to the reservation at midnight. Yeah, because that was the time, but it was my last lead. So at midnight, I show up at the chief's door. He had a nice house. It wasn't bad. It was, a regular 3-bedroom, 2-bath kind of thing. I knock on the door. He's shocked. It's pouring rain. I'm wearing a $50 polyester suit. He opens the door, and I begin my presentation like they trained me to do. And I was doing my presentation, but because it was pouring rain on the West Coast, he said, come on in. He invited me in. And the nice thing was, after we finished, he bought a policy for himself and his wife and all of his children except one. And the one he didn't buy a policy for was married, had his own family, and lived just down the street. So I asked him, for the address, because you're supposed to ask for referrals, and I did. And so when I left his place, I went looking for his son. It was 2 a.m., 2 in the morning. It took me 3 hours to get there. I wasn't leaving without following up that lead, because I didn't think I'd ever be back. So at 2 o'clock in the morning, I found my house. There were no lights on. But as my eyes adjusted, Shane, to the dark, I noticed upon closer inspection from the dirt road, there was a blue glow coming from behind the curtains. That meant that somebody was up watching TV.
Yeah.
So 2 o'clock in the morning, I knock on the door. I'm cold calling at 2 in the morning.
That's round Appalachia. We'd say you're looking to get shot. That's I don't know if I'd be doing that down in Harlan, Kentucky, when the sun sets at 6 o'clock. But you know what I'm saying? I respect the game and the hustle.
The thing is, I didn't know any better. I was 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm up. Let's talk business. Long story short, he invited me in, bought a bunch of policies and all that. I hit my 50 policies my first week, and I got 40 renewals on top of that. Wow. So I was off and running. And so I kind of got started on that, but I had to pay all my own expenses, a lot of things, didn't make a lot of money. And I was gone all the time. That's their model, was you're gone every week. And so I didn't like that. So I left that and got a job at Dun & Bradstreet.
What year was this? What year was this?
This was 1975.
Man, I'm telling you, and everybody listen to this, who, because I got a lot of online entrepreneurs paying attention. You know what I mean? A lot of online entrepreneurs are listening. Guys, y'all don't know how good we've got it. I mean, now we can go live and 1 million people can watch us on our YouTube channels or whatever. And, but the hustle still has to be there. The time still has to be there. But like, that's just what it takes, man, to go. And we were talking earlier, I think it was off air. I'm not sure if this made the air. We were talking about the price of admission, and this is the price of admission you paid to go out and learn those sales and those techniques and those tactics and meet these people. And we all have to figure out what is the price of admission to the next level and to greatness in our chosen niche. And if we do that, we can go out and you can do a lot of things with it.
Well, right. And what I started with, I didn't have techniques or training or knowledge. And that all I had was a somewhat blind belief. That was it. I mean, I thought if I'm up and you're up, it doesn't really matter what time it is. I'm knocking on your door.
Yeah. Do you think that's why some people don't make it to the hustle stage, is because they don't believe it? Like they hear about it and they see it, but like until you believe, we always tell everybody, just go do it, just go do the thing, just go try. But maybe it's belief that has to happen before the try.
Well, there's a whole thing about mindset and belief. But at that point, I had a belief system. I had a way of viewing the world that made it okay to cold call at 2 a.m. Yeah. And I just followed the process after that and did whatever it did. And I got the result. I think they were absolutely shocked to have a white boy show up in a blue polyester on the west coast of British Columbia at 2 a.m, knocking on his door selling life insurance on his doorstep. I'm sure that been done before horse hands.
Yeah, man.
Anyways, a little while later, a friend of mine comes to me. He says, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm now working for Dun & Brad and making, I think, $730 a month salary. And he said, well, why don't you, he said, I work for this copier company and I made $5,300 or $5,000, whatever it was last month. Where do I apply? He said, they're looking
Sign me up.
Yeah. I said, like, where do you apply? I mean, I want to know where that is. And so I went and applied for the job and launched the job. And I found out, okay, now, so you got to go cold call down the street, knocking on doors and doing the selling, all the things that you do in selling, prospecting, interviewing, making a demonstration, a presentation, closing the sale. And I was comfortable with all aspects except for the prospecting, the presentation, and the closing. In other words, the only thing I was comfortable with was actually doing writing out the proposal. That's the only thing I felt comfortable at. But it took me. I remember when I started cold calling, I sat in front of a building, an engineering firm, for 45 minutes, trying to get the nerve to walk in and talk to the receptionist. And finally, I just drove away because I was like, oh, I don't know what to say. So I want to say to people, I didn't have an innate ability and I wasn't trained, but I had to learn how to do these things if I was going to, make any money. So I did. So I went from being not fruitful. I went from being not even getting by. I went from dead last and I started learning from my peers and they were average. And so guess what? I was able to elevate my game to average, which meant I could get by. Yeah. And I was slightly above average, probably in terms of other fields around. But I climbed my way up to kind of average, nothing special. Now, I didn't like average, but that's what I was. That's what I was performing at.
And that's sometimes I find it's who you're around. I mean, that's just like you were below average because you had no jobs in sales.
Right.
You get to average, you look around and everybody's around you. And this is why people move. This is why peer groups happen. This is why you get out there. You got to, it's hard to move past average when that's all you're around. And average is sometimes good, better than what you were.
Yeah. And you're getting by with it.
Yeah, man. So you just got to get around better people sometimes to be able to elevate.
The thing is, though, in my sales career, Shane, I, as a believer, I was taught the way they wanted you to sell. They like 20 Ways to Close a Sale by J. Douglas Edwards back in the 60s is the thing. You got to learn the order blank close, the Ben Franklin close, the alternative choice closes, the whatever, all these different kind of closes. Most of which, although there's some effectiveness with them, they're kind of nonsense because when I asked my wife to marry me, I didn't say to her, "Hey, sweetheart, would you like to get married on the 15th or would the 30th be better?"
Right.
Make up your mind by 5 o'clock. I'll take you to Hawaii.
Right, exactly. You weren't throwing in a bonus and did you get the wall clock and you were holding it behind you like a timer, like a scarcity timer behind you?
Right. So I didn't do that, right? And neither did you. We didn't ask our spouse to marry us, our girlfriend to marry us until we were very, very sure what the answer was going to be. Sales should be like that. The close is not a high pressure thing at all, but we were taught pressure. I didn't like it. So I was looking for another way. I couldn't find it. I go to the bookstore. I couldn't find books from a biblical perspective on how to sell. The first one I found that was close was called Non-Manipulative Selling. I thought, oh, I want that. I want to learn how to do this without using pressure and techniques and all that kind of stuff, because I wouldn't use it and I was never getting above average, but I didn't know how else to do it. Now, fast forward a number of years, and I ended up moving to the United States. And I came down in 1985, and I got a job January of 86 working for, again, a copier company. Now, I'd been working for one in Vancouver for about 6 years. Then I was out of it for a few years. And I went for another one for a year in Toronto, and I was out of it for a couple of years. And now I'm down in Tennessee, Nashville.
That's next door right now.
Yeah.
Right down below us.
And I'm thinking, and I was getting married, going to get married to the gal. We were married 24 years. She passed away in 2010, but we had a wonderful marriage for 24 years. And at that time, we were just about ready to get married. And I was driving through town, through Nashville on I-40, and I'm thinking, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life now that I'm down here. And the Lord just spoke to me, and he does that. If you hear him, he's pointed out a building to me. He said, that's where you're going to work. And I looked at that. I thought, some guy's name in the building. I don't know what they do. And I saw they had Rico and Savin copiers. Copiers. I said, God, I don't want to sell copiers.
That does sound like, I always think that sounds like the most boring job ever, but it's so funny because we have a commercial copier, and man, the people that are in that industry dig it, and they are hard workers, and they really serve you. Like, I don't think there's anything in my life where I get better service than my copier people. Like, we call them, they're there. That they need to sell something new, we buy it, right? So that is a strange industry from the outside. It's like, copiers, but then people get in it and they dig it and they do.
Yeah. Well, they're usually highly trained, and it's a very competitive field.
Yes.
So when I came down to the States and I got that job selling copiers, and I went in and I basically interviewed them for the job. I liked them. I said, okay, I'll work for you. They put me in a branch office in Murfreesboro, Tennessee.
There you go.
They never had a successful program. They had a failure guy that wasn't working out. So it said, would you work in a branch instead of Nashville? I said, sure. And I got that job. And on day one, back at the head office in Nashville, the vice president of sales said to me, Shane, this is important. He said, now, son, here's the way it works. For every 4 or 5 copiers that you demonstrate, you should make 1 sale. The national average, he said, is 1 out of 4. 1 out of 4. He said, now, we don't expect any sales your first month because you got to get out there, start cold calling, find some leads, scare up some opportunities. We expect 2 sales your second month and 4 sales a month thereafter. Meaning, Shane, in the first 90 days, we want you to make 6 sales. Now, I was with the company 2 years. I didn't see anybody do that. When I got home that day, my wife looked at me. She said, what's wrong? I said, they're asking me to sell 1 out of 4. She said, so what's the problem? I said, that means they're asking me to accept a 75% failure rate. I said, what farmer plants 4 rows of corn and prays to God that just one of them comes up?
Yeah.
And so what I did was I picked up my Bible. And said, I'm going to find principles and strategies that I can apply to the sales process. And instead of selling 1 out of 4, I intend to sell 1 out of 1. And she looked at me like, good luck with that, cowboy. And so the next day I report for duty at the Murfreesboro office, and the branch manager says, son, what are your goals? I said, well, I've thought about it. I intend to sell 1 out of 1. And he looked at me like, oh my God, we made a horrible hiring decision. This guy.
Who is this Canadian coming down here telling us how to buy 1 out of 1? I work, you're whatever, man. Go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but they'd already printed my cards, and I'm on straight commission, a bit of an advance, but away you go. So away I went. 90 days, as it turned out, 90 days later, I was at the company quarterly review. Now, by the way, what I did was I actually studied it. I mean, I went into Proverbs because it's the management of people and things. I wanted to understand how to do that. And I began there. That's where I started my study. And I started studying it as a sales training book.
Yeah.
I mean, I really did. I didn't just kind of read it haphazard. I was looking for stuff. 90 days later at the company meeting, you're in front of all your peers. It's like a quarterly thing. And all your results are projected on a screen behind you. And you got to explain. And I said, well, I've been here 90 days, made X number of calls, got 22 demos. I'm pleased to report that I also have 22 sales.
Oh man.
It was 1 out of 1, Shane. Yeah. And it was 3.5 times the goal that I never saw anybody hit of 6. Yeah. And so for the next 30 minutes, because you're supposed to go sit down, for the next 30 minutes, I was pelted with questions by my peers who were meeting me for the first time because I worked in a branch office. And I just wanted to be successful for one reason. My big reason was I wanted to have a platform of excellence so I could share the gospel with people from a credible perspective.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be like I'm the worst salesman in the world, but let me tell you about my Jesus. I wanted to be the most successful guy so that you'd want to know. That was my thinking. That's how I went at it.
You know, it's funny when we started our podcast, something happened really early in our podcast journey. It was interesting. You know, at first we started it to help our friends because one of Jocelyn's friends, after we quit our job, said she wanted to homeschool her kids. And if she could make money online, she'd be able to quit her job and do that.
Yep.
So we helped her do that, just totally random. Didn't really even think anything of it. And we realized that what we did worked for her, and she quit her job and homeschooled her kids. So we go on and we start thinking about maybe we should tell other people. Got some great advice from a mentor of mine named Pat Flynn, and he said, go for it. He had us on his podcast to help us launch the thing. And we had 120 people join the first webinar we ever did. And our podcast got listeners very fast, like for the industry, you know?
Yep.
But really, really early, man. Someone from reached out to us on email, and they said, hey, I'm from Iran, and we're not, because of sanctions, we're not allowed to have credit cards, but through VPNs and other ways, I've discovered we do get a lot of content, and I discovered your podcast. I think I could do something like that here. Like, I think that these principles could help me with a business or something, but I cannot join your membership. We don't have credit cards here. And I sat back and I was stunned that a couple kids from Kentucky were influencing a person behind the curtain of sanctions in Iran. And I talked to Jocelyn, and we gave this person a free membership, and we let them have full access to everything we had. But it was at that moment where I was like, Jocelyn, you know, we're Christians. What if God's not just telling us to change people's businesses or lives? It's like, what if this is actually, like you just said, this is the practical way that we have been gifted to serve people so that we can spread the gospel. Yeah. And that's why we added Bible scripture at the end of every one of our podcasts on the Flip Lifestyle podcast, is because I realized, gosh, this just helping people with this gives me a door and gives me influence. It's not just about the income, it's the influence. Right. And it sounds like this is like, wow. I mean, if you can just serve people practically with what you're good at, it opens doors for things that are even more important than that on the backside of it, you know?
What happened was that, and you're absolutely right, Shane. I finished the year less than 100%. It was about 92%, a little bit above 90% for the year. Also, it was a record number I've ever sold. Also, I worked less than any of my peers. I was in the territory about 10 and a half months out of the year. So that's not at all to brag. That's to make the point that what I was learning worked. And so they pulled me aside and they said, can you show the new salespeople, are not a new, but our rookie team here that's not very good. Can you? I said, yeah, I don't have any ideas. I have the solution. When you want to know what it is, give me a call. And they did. And the first Monday in January, the first business day, I was the new sales manager. They wanted to know is this transferable, or is my pink, as it had been reported, is he from Mars? That's what they wanted to know. And so 10 months later, Shane, my team, their results were up 430%.
Wow. Just applying these principles that we outlined from the Bible.
And I did one thing in this. I have to tell you this. I tongue in cheek say I cheated. I didn't cheat, of course, but in the process, because people were eating up what I had to say and valuing it, I led most of the team to Christ.
Man, that's a powerful testimony.
Yeah, and just brought them along, and it was amazing testimonies in that process. So
it's amazing that the sales team were. I'm sure in the South it's probably a little more receptive for a business but like when you walk in and you start teaching it, you're like, what'd you do? And you're like, well, here's what I did. And you're like, turn to Proverbs 32. And you're like, wait, what? Like there's a lot of people that would shut that down, right? But you had the results to be like, look, you asked me what I did. This is what I did. Do you want to do more of it? Let's go. You got the results first instead of browbeating them with the scriptures first. Yeah. Right. And it opens that door to do that. I mean, it's pretty impressive, pretty amazing.
So that's what that's how I got into it. They made me the trainer for the entire company. And all along, I wanted to start my own business. And kind of like Peter Daniels says, if you know Peter Daniels, he was a very successful sales guy. But when he went into business on his own, he failed miserably 3 times because he didn't understand certain aspects of business. He understood sales. That was what happened to me. And I did terrible when I first started in business because I could sell. That was the easy part. But the rest of it, didn't have a grasp on.
It's like a guy who could cook a mean pizza. But man, it's hard to run the pizza joint. You can cook a great pizza, bro. I mean, but I don't know if you can run your own restaurant. We'll see about that.
That's exactly it. That's a really good analogy. So, I wrote a number of books after that. I started my own publishing company that was successful. We did sell it. I did. My first book was called The Bible Incorporated in Your Life, Job, and Business. And it's just scripture compiled conversationally. I self-published it. Sold 400,000 copies, the last number I know.
Wow. That's incredible, dude.
Yeah. But there's certain elements of faith that come into play here. Because if anybody hears me in our short time together thinking, that they think, well, I really think I'm hot stuff or something. You're wrong.
No, and I've known you now, and we've had conversations too. Yeah. It's 100. You're just revealing what happened.
Right.
I mean, exactly. You don't got to worry about that, man.
We're made of the same clay, brother. The very same clay. But so I found out some things. And so, when I did my book, and my role of faith played a very important role. My business was going bust. So I decided, I was at church one day, and the preacher said, instead of asking God to bless what you're doing, he just said this sort of a general blanket statement to the congregation. He said, why don't you find out what he's blessing and do that? And I said, Lord, what are you blessing? And I think it was Psalm 69:11. I think that's the chapter and verse. And I'm going to paraphrase, but basically, blessed are those who publish the word.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I said, publish the word. You want me to publish books?
Yeah.
I said, give me an idea and I'll do it. And at that time, I was completely broke because my business, I was not getting paid. I had no income. We were in a bad way. And he said, start a publishing company. And I was crazy, but I did. And I wrote the book, the Bible Incorporated. And as I said, it's got hundreds and hundreds of pages of scripture compiled conversationally. That's all it is. It's just this. It's just the wisdom of God compiled in a conversational format. And so no commentary. So I put it together. And I thought, okay, I got to get this published. I didn't have any way to pay for the book. I called a printer and I said, how many do you want? I said, 25,000. I thought that was a good place to start. And
I know. My best friend, he's got a book he self-published, and he was writing his first book, and he's a Christian rock star. He's an amazing guy. His name's Chris Greenwood. I'll give him a shout out here, Manifest. And but when he orders his book orders, it makes me nervous. He's always like ordering like 10, 15,000 books. So I'm like, bro, and he's like, I got this, man. I believe. Let's go. Let's sell them all. Yeah. And I'm like, but it always makes me nervous when he does that, man, because you got to pay for it up front.
Oh, I know. In my case, I wasn't in the business. I'd never published or written anything. And I ordered 25,000 leather-bound, brass-cornered, gold gilt-edged, gift-wrapped in a box individually, 25,000. And the printer called me and said, are you sure you want 25,000? 80% of the books published in America never sell more than 5,000 copies. Are you sure that's what you want? I thought, wow, I didn't know that. I prayed about it for, 2 seconds. I said, I feel good about this. I just have to sell enough of them in the first 30 days to pay for the print run, which was $100,000, by the way, because it got bound with leather and so on. So it was a big expense. And I didn't have money to pay my mortgage, and I'm chalking up $100,000 bill right off the bat. Anyway, long story short.
What'd your wife say when you did that, by the way?
She was with it because she knew, she believed like I did that this was a God venture. So we were going to follow it. Nice. So we were. It wasn't like I did this on my own. We were together on. I mean, I wrote the book, but it was a joint decision. We're going to do this.
Yeah. And so my wife, Jocelyn, definitely falls in the believe but verify camp for me. she's like, Shana, I believe in you, and I believe you, but let me look into this a little bit. Like that's
yeah. I totally get that, but I was just out there doing it, right? And so we order the books, and they come to my basement. I didn't have a store. I didn't have anybody to call on, and so what I did was I knew there were book distributors that sold the bookstores. So I got in my car. I drove 1,000 miles or however far it was north to Michigan, to Ann Arbor, Michigan, to a company called Spring Arbor, the largest book distributor in the Christian world, in America, in the world, frankly. And I walked in and I said, I'd like you guys to, buy my book and distribute it. And the guy looked at me, the buyer, and he said, you're just a guy with a basement full of books. We don't deal with people like you. We deal with established publishers. And I said, I want you to buy the minimum order that I will allow is 1,000 books. You got to buy 1,000. He said, you're crazy. We buy from the biggest publishers in the world. We buy 1 or 2 cases from them, our initial order, to see how it's going to sell. So you're out of luck, pal. And I said, you don't understand something. And I held up the mock-up. I said, this is going to be a best-selling book. It's going to go around the world, and it's going to be on TV. And stores all over this country are going to want to have the book, and you won't have it. And my minimum order is 1,000 copies. He bought 1,000 copies.
Wow.
I went from there, and I drove to Iowa. Same story. They bought 1,000. Went from there, and I went to Appalachian.
You're just walking into bookstores off the street.
No, these are distributors.
Distributors. Oh, I got you. You're just walking in these distributors off the street, though.
Like
you're not Thomas Nelson or something. Or whatever.
No, I'm nobody. I'm absolutely nobody. And then the last guy bought 5,000, and so boom, we sold 7,000 copies before they actually rolled off the press.
Oh, this is a pre-sale pitch.
Yeah.
That's now we're talking my language. I love a good pre-sale. Make people vote with the wallet so you can pay for it when you print them.
Yeah. So anyway, there's a lot to the story, but we got it out. So we did that and so on. But sometime later, I really we ended up selling the company. Had some difficult times in our business, and so I sold the company, and I thought, well. My wife
the roller coaster is amazing, isn't it? It's like you go and you climb that mountain and you pull off something. It's like skidding in sideways, from Ace Ventura. You're like, how did I park this car? And then you look down and you realize like two of your wheels are still 100 miles back. It's like, dang it, that's how I did it, right? But it's like the roller coaster is like you just have to. It's just part of the game, man. It's just part of the game. It's crazy how things change.
Yeah, the ups and the downs and all that. Basically, my wife said to me, she's, in your language, you make great pizzas, but you're not a great pizza manager.
Right. You're selling the pizzas. You're convinced it smells delicious. And then it's like, we still got to cook them and we got to get them to the table. How are we going to do that?
So we sold the company, and I started doing sales training because she said, you're really good at sales. Maybe you should do that. So I just started cold turkey immediately doing sales training for corporations. And I did corporate. I mean, I've been hired by Fortune 100 companies.
Your background's incredible.
Come on in and do all that kind of stuff. And in the process, I studied biblical models. And in the process, Shane, I found a biblical model, an actual blueprint in the scripture that was written, dictated by God in detail, of a blueprint of an actual place in heaven. And he said, this is what you're going to build here because it represents heaven and the way things work in heaven. And I looked at that and said, well, if it represents the way things operate in heaven and he wanted it on earth, maybe we could learn from that. Maybe I could learn how to model business based on that blueprint. And so I began to study that for I don't know how many years and build out a whole sales program and help thousands and thousands of people learn biblical models for success in sales and in business based on that.
I'll tell you something fascinating here that I think is that story is incredible. And but there's two lessons that I wrote down here that are probably, I think I'll change to some of the language I use. Like belief leads to courage. Like I think I try to inspire a lot of courage in people to take a chance, but the belief came first. I think that's really something I took out of that story. Also too, like many of the pizza cooks that open the pizza restaurants they're so stubborn. They don't realize maybe I'm a chef and I'm not a pizza owner. And like to look at your own story and go, man, I'm doing all these things. I'm really good at sales. Had an unfair advantage of your wife, like I do, going, yo, you need to focus over here. Like my wife basically a couple years ago said, why are you doing she always says like, you shouldn't be doing that. Like not from a laziness or I'm better than doing that task. She's like, yeah, you suck at that, Shane. And, and like a couple of years ago, we just realized like, the best thing you do is talk and network with people. Like that's where, so the whole business warped event to me podcasting and me speaking and me making building relationships, authentic, deep relationships with people. And I had to hire all those other people around me that could support that model. But so to see that, a lot of entrepreneurs, they want to be everything to everybody. They want to be the serial entrepreneur. They want to sit in the chair in Shark Tank. You know what? What are you great at? Maybe, just maybe you should focus on that. And I love that's where you went. Now, tell me about the 7 secrets. So you go through all this research and we distill it down. Give me just a real high level, brief outline of these core principles that you did pull out of all your study and how of your sales process. Because I think, if everybody could get more sales, everybody's business would get better. So what are those core principles?
Well, without going into over detail on these things, level 1, which is in the blueprint, is the first place people come into. And there's 2 things there that speak about. One's called an altar of sacrifice, where the Israelites would come and they would, have different kind of offerings and things like that. But it actually speaks of 5 areas of character development.
Okay.
And so the first thing that you need to learn, the first thing you want to succeed in sales, in business, in life, is character. And so what were the things that dealt with character? The first one had to do with accountability, meaning if I do something wrong and it causes harm, I will make it right. I will make them whole. Okay, that's one of the things. So that is important. Another one has to do with gratitude, just being thankful all the time, because that changes your heart.
And this is all under number 1, though, right?
This is all under number 1. This is all number 1. See, level 1 is 2 things: character and competence. Character and competence. Character has like 5 major areas, but 2 of them have to do with accountability and gratitude, or thankfulness, if you will. Another one is generosity. Now, I listened to Peter Daniels, and I listened because he's a very wealthy guy, 89 years old. He's passing on his secrets to me. We talk by email almost every day now, and he's telling me what he did. And one of the things, when he became a Christian, and he was a bricklayer, he was illiterate, he couldn't read or write. First thing, once he taught himself how to read and write, he said, I just wanted to see how much money a man could give away in his life.
So you got to make more to give it away.
Oh yeah. Well, but he started giving and prospering and giving. He said he lived by Luke 6:38. That's what he did.
So my takeaway from number 1 is, and this, I see so many entrepreneurs come into this without character. It's just about getting the number.
Yeah.
And that's the people I usually see that make a bunch of money in their first year and then lose it all the second, because they don't have the character to back up any kind of success through sales. So what's that? What's number 2 on the what's level 2?
Accountability. The second one was gratitude.
Yeah. Got it.
It's a thing about being thankful. Okay. A third one has to do with generosity, being generous. The fourth one has to do with humility.
Now, are these, hold on, let me back up. So are these the 7 biblical principles?
No, this is all under number 1. This is all about character. The 5 areas you got to develop.
All right.
Humility.
So you're saying, like, listen, people, if you can't do these 5 things, the number 2 and 3 are.
You'll just be stuck in level 1, and you'll have some level of success depending on which ones you violate. So humility is part of it, which is basically the idea of being teachable. And if you're not teachable, you've hit your ceiling. Wherever you are right now, you've hit it. Okay. And then the last one is commitment, which is a huge one. It's part of the character thing. Are you committed? When the going gets tough, the tough get going. What are you going to do? And so those 5 areas form character. And so, of course, I talk a lot about it. That's part of level 1. I got to work on character. If you got your character and you allow yourself to be refined in that crucible, you're off to a good start. And the second one has to do with preparation and competence, and a simple model for how do I get good at what I'm doing? How do I get good at that? And it has to do with, basically looking at what you've done, seeing what needs to be fixed, correcting it, reviewing it. There's a bit of a process, but that's level 1 stuff. But people become millionaires in level 1 because they just apply those principles. Level 2 is a place that has no light in it whatsoever, except for this beautiful gold candlestick that burns oil, and it's solid gold, and it illuminated a table that had bread on it. This is in the blueprint. And the bread, of course, Jesus said, I am the bread of life. It speaks about bread. And so he said he was the word of God. It was the word that became flesh and dwelt among us. And so in one sense, that candle, if you will, that candlestick illuminated the bread or the word. So I begin to look in the word and say, okay, what can I learn in the scripture about, let's say, prospecting? We know, they say sales is a numbers game. Sales is a numbers game. So you hear that all your life. So I'm just going to work harder, make more calls. But did you know, Shane, in the parable of the sower, this is in the word of God, this is what the candle illuminates, there is a model for prospecting that would blow your way, where you get 84% of the result in this parable came from 17% of the seed.
Yeah.
17% of the seed in the parable sower produced 84% of the result. So how to identify with that? Well, it gives 4 kinds of seed, and you don't waste your time on the other 3, and you go after the other one. But when
this is like a biblical version of the Pareto principle a little bit. It's like, you know what I'm saying? It's like 80-20. It's like 20% of people are vacuuming the church after Sunday. Where's the other 80% go? Where y'all going? Like, help us clean the church, man. It's like, that's what you're saying is like, pick the right seeds, just focus on.
And you know what not to, it identifies what a bad seed looks like. So I'm not going to spend my time there. Now, I didn't know that when I was young, so I spent a lot of time on not good seed, and I often could convert them to a sale, but I was expending an awful lot of time for a harvest where I could have spent it on a better seed. I didn't know that at the time. So that's just an example. Or take negotiating. And negotiating is a skill. Well, everybody knows in the business environment, they say you don't get what you deserve in life, you get what you negotiate. So, okay, but I'm going to step inside level 2 and I'm going to look at the scripture and I'm going to say, wait a minute, is there a model for negotiating? There's an incredible model for negotiating, and it's a letter that Paul wrote to Philemon. And when you look at that and realize that he was negotiating basically the safe return of a runaway slave, and instead of having him punished, Paul wanted him to be received like it was Paul himself, the guy's best friend, walking through the door. That was a tall order in that day, in that culture at that time, but it happened because that guy went on to become a bishop in the early church. So we know some incredible things happen. So I studied that out and say, what's the model? What did he do? And so those are the kind of things that I did, is I would study the biblical models, making a present. I call those the negotiating secrets of Paul, or the Moses questioning strategy, which is one of my absolute favorites. Because when Moses was getting ready to go into the promised land, and he sent 12 guys on a recon mission, right?
Yeah.
And they come back and they had different reports. But he said, here's what I want you to do. And he had 7 questions he wanted answers for. Shane, when you see 7 in the Bible, always look deeper.
Oh yeah, that's it. Yeah.
And so so it's a big deal. So Moses knew that, hey, we're going to go in this, so we're going to be met with resistance, which means there's risk. But if we're successful, there's reward. Those 3 things are what business is all about. I get resistance, you get resistance. We take risk. We're good at it. We get a reward.
So you took these stories. So like, I'm just going to go through there's 7 secrets of the sale.
Yeah.
And you went through level 1, level 2, level 3, right? And went through these levels.
Yep.
So the first one, like, until you have commitment, humility, generosity, accountability in place, and then competence in place, you would not even be able, without those, you can't even figure out where to spend your time on the right seeds. Like, if you're not competent at your field or you don't understand it, you can't go to level 2 because you have to figure those out first.
If you go into level 2, but you don't have character, you're going to abuse it. It's going to blow up on you.
Yeah. Or if you go in without competence, you're going to get it wrong. You're not even going to know how to even negotiate or prospect. Basically.
So you want to have some basics that you do well, but now I want some strategy. Level 1 is more about the actual action item. Level 2 is more about the strategy and a sort of a process of doing things that a better word is way, the way of doing things that is God's way. And I want to find out his way. Yeah. And so whether it's asking questions, which is Jesus asked 300 questions. Yeah. He answered only less than 10, but he didn't do it because he didn't know anything. He did it because he was helping people to understand. It's a very important thing. So all those things are in there. Level 1. So level 1, your character and competence. That's the first 2 things. Then you get inside, and there's this candlestick. Well, basically, in a nutshell, it's all about guidance. Yeah. The Holy Spirit, because it's typical of the guidance, and it opens up the Word, which is now I'm going to find biblical strategies in the Word, illuminated by the Holy Spirit, shows me how these things work. I've got hundreds of things just from that. That's where I spend the bulk of my time. And the third or the fifth thing, but the third thing in here in level 2 is prayer. Yeah. And people say, oh, yeah. No. Absolutely. Shane, I rarely went into a sales call without praying first. I didn't get on a call today without praying first. I don't engage in something because I want his favor, and I want to hear what he says. And I want, I'm trying to tune into him and walk with him. So that's a very important element. And then when you get into the third level, that's more about, I call it the miraculous or the supernatural. It's where things, clearly the hand of God through grace and faith, those 2 things. Grace is God's ability working in you to do what you could never do on your own. Yeah. And faith, of course, is kind of mountain moving. You believed, and boy, it happened. And I'm shortening it down. But those 7 things put together are an incredible model, which I obviously spend my whole course is, built out on that.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So I got you. So it's 3 levels with 7 secrets baked in. And once you stack those together, you've got this biblical model of where you've pulled all this ancient wisdom out from the Word, where it's like, the Bible tells us how to do these correctly.
Yeah, exactly.
That's fascinating.
I didn't make this stuff up.
No. It's like Dave Ramsey pulling out all the debt stuff, and I'm always amazed at how much is actually in there. Like, I remember, it's like my dad one time, I was on a losing streak in my football career. I was like 0-8 my first year as a head coach. I was just getting pummeled. And my dad came out to watch us at a game. We were going into like game 9, right? And thought we had a chance to compete that week. We did. It was probably our best game that year. Still got beat, but whatever. And We beat them next year. I turned it around. But like he handed me beforehand, he had printed out a psalm. I can't remember exactly what number it is. I don't want to say it. I'll try and put it in the show notes if I can find it. But if I can't, I was shocked at how relevant it was to an 0-8 football coach. And it just like reading this psalm sounded like a losing season. And then there was hope at the end of it. And I was like, man, it's just, if you just get in there, so many people are like trying to figure it out, but I don't think that any of us have to figure it out. Like it's all right in front of us. We just have to apply what we learn, man. Well, listen, dude, tell everybody real quick, man. I know you've got a book about this and you've got information about this. If they want to go down this rabbit hole, they want to get the 7 secrets, learn about the 3 levels of biblical sales. Where can they get that? And then how can people get in touch with you if they want to get in touch with you?
Well, listen, I urge everybody to go to 7secretsofthesale.com. Doesn't matter whether it's the number or the word, 7secretsofthesale, kind of like that, .com. Go to that website and, I'll invite you into some teaching where I actually take some time and walk you through a little bit more about what this is like. I'll give you a free download of the Bible Incorporated as well. You have that as just for participating in that. And that's where you can begin the learning process. We do the training. We have a whole online training, 150, 60 videos, whatever it is. We got, monthly coaching, weekly coaching, a lot of stuff that's there for people that want to either increase their sales, improve their sales, become proficient at that, grow their business. They're CEOs, they're entrepreneurs, they're sales guys, whatever, have them from all over the world. And we take them in this process and show them, here's a biblical way to do this. Because I want to learn God's ways. There are other things. I mean, Dillinger robbed banks, Jesse James robbed banks. They made money, but that's not the way I want to do things, right? Yeah. I say, God, what are your ways? And I know that they are just and true. They're everlasting. They're good. I want to follow his ways. And so that's where I found him. And it's taken me, almost 35 years to get to where I'm at right now of studying this with intensity and then testing it in the marketplace. Helped a company, a couple of years ago that had 3 agents, 3 guys. They had 12. They were down to 3. They were looking for a job. And the CEO, a friend of mine, said, "Can you help me? Can we maybe turn this around?" 6 months later, they had turned a profit, about $1 million profit, and they were off to the races. He said, "Help me for 2 more years." And I did. And at the end of that 3-year run, that company with 3 struggling agents became the fastest growing real estate brokerage in the history of the Inc. 500 and the 6th.
I know who that guy is
in the world. Yeah, sure you do. I mean, it's all over, Inc. magazine. So, but I was the guy charged with, can you turn this thing around? And they gave me free reign to teach what I know.
It's amazing, dude.
Free reign.
Awesome. So everybody check that out. And we'll put that in the show notes as well. Michael Pink, man, I am so blessed to know you, dude.
Thank you.
I know that I saw the full presentation that you did the other day of going a little bit deeper into all the secrets. And man, everybody needs to go check out those resources, those materials, because man, if you're trying to make an impact in the world, trying to increase your income, trying to get your influence up, that's the way to do it, man. So Michael Pink, thank you so much for being here today.
Dane, thank you. It's an honor, buddy. Good to see you.
All right, guys, that wraps up my conversation with Michael Pink. He is an awesome guy, and he's got the chops. He's got the proof, the numbers, and the receipts when it comes to taking sales to the next level. So make sure you check out all of Michael's books and check him out online. And hey, if you love the Shane Sam Show, if you're enjoying the guests that I'm bringing to you every single week, I'd love to hear about it. Head over to Apple Podcasts right now. Leave this podcast a 5-star review. Tell us what you love about the show. If we're bringing value to you every single week by introducing you to these amazing guests, we want to create more, and your feedback helps us to have the energy and the excitement and the passion to bringing this show to you every single week. I read every single review, and I would love to read yours. And wherever you listen to this podcast, make sure you rate it, download it, subscribe to it. And if you think it will be helpful to people why not give it a share on social media or even tell a friend? And if you need help starting or building or growing an online business, that's what we do inside the Flipped Lifestyle community. Hey, if you want to connect with me, the best place to do that is over at shanesams.com. You can check out all the amazing resources that I have there to help online entrepreneurs start, build, and grow online businesses. You can also see where I'm going to be speaking and traveling around the country. I'd love to connect with you out there on the road. You can also check out my other podcast. It's called the Flipped Lifestyle Podcast. On that show, I bring real members of my community onto the podcast every single week. I give them a live coaching call on air to help them build their online business. and then I air that so everybody can learn from the conversation. Make sure you subscribe, share, and review all of our podcasts. We will keep serving you and bringing it to you every single week. But that's all the time we have for today. So until I see you again, whatever you're trying to accomplish in life, be consistent, be prolific, be relentless. Pick up your stone, cast it out upon the waters, and cause many ripples. We'll see you then.